You are not broken, just becoming. It was an early morning, the kind that felt still yet full of potential. The first light of dawn crept in through the curtains, casting a soft golden hue across the room. For a moment, the world was quiet. No rush, no hurry, just the hum of the day, waiting to be born. Rose, sitting by the window, cradled a mug of hot tea in her hands, letting the warmth seep into her bones, slowly unraveling the tension that had taken root in her heart. She was getting older now, nearing 70, and the years had shaped her in ways she had not always welcomed. There were lines on her face that were not there before, stories etched into the skin she could no longer erase. Her once vibrant hair had turned silver, a silent testament to the passing of time. But it wasn't just the physical changes she felt. It was something deeper, something that seemed to tug at her soul. For as long as she could remember, Rose had always prided herself on her strength. She had carried so much over the years, so many burdens, so many responsibilities, all while raising a family, holding down a job, and tending to the needs of others. She had learned to wear resilience like armor, and in many ways, it had served her well. But now, as the years had gone by, she felt herself unraveling in a way she couldn't quite explain. There were days when the weight of her past seemed too much to bear. Regrets filled her thoughts. Mistakes she had made, things she had said, moments she wished she could take back. She felt as though she had failed in so many ways, like pieces of her were missing, fractured by the passing years. There was a part of her that felt broken, as though the pieces of herself that had once fit together so well had somehow come apart. But as she sat there by the window, sipping her tea, something shifted within her. The quiet stillness of the morning seemed to hold a secret, a soft whisper that said, "You are not broken." It was a simple thought, yet it felt like a revelation. She wasn't broken. She was simply becoming someone new, someone who had learned, had grown, had lived. Rose closed her eyes, letting the warmth of that realization wash over her. Her life had been a journey, a winding path full of twists and turns. There were moments of joy, of course, but also moments of pain, loss, and regret. Yet in all of it, she had never truly been broken. She had simply been changing, evolving, learning to carry the weight of her experiences with grace, even when it felt unbearable. She was, as life always is, becoming. The soft rustling of leaves outside her window caught her attention. She opened her eyes, watching the trees sway gently in the wind. The rhythm of nature seemed to echo the rhythm of her life. The trees had grown old, too, but they had never been broken by the storms they had weathered. They had bent with the wind, stretched toward the sun, and continued to grow. There was wisdom in that, a quiet knowing that even in the face of hardship, life continued, always becoming something new. For a long time, Rose had believed that she needed to be strong, that she had to hold everything together. But now, she realized that strength wasn't about never falling apart. Strength was about allowing herself to change, to shift, to grow. It was about understanding that life was not a destination to be reached, but a journey to be experienced. She was not broken. She was simply becoming someone who could embrace her imperfections, her mistakes, and her growth. With that thought, she stood up from the window, feeling lighter than she had in days. The weight that had been pressing on her chest seemed to have lifted, replaced by a quiet peace. She wasn't finished yet. There was still more to become, more to learn, and more to live. And that was okay. It was more than okay. It was beautiful. Rose took another sip of her tea, a soft smile tugging at her lips. She was not broken. She was becoming, and that was enough. The days passed with a soft rhythm. Rose continued her mornings by the window, each day unfolding into a new discovery about herself. She found herself slowing down, taking moments to breathe deeply, to listen to the quiet whispers of her heart. The world outside seemed to be moving faster, yet for her, time had started to feel more expansive, more open. In those moments of stillness, she realized that there was beauty in her slowness. There was beauty in becoming, in letting go of the need to constantly rush, to constantly strive. Her children, now grown, had begun to visit more often. There were long conversations over dinner, laughter shared around the kitchen table, and quiet moments of reflection that Rose hadn't known she missed until they returned. She had always been the caregiver, the one who held everything together. But now, in her later years, she found herself learning how to let others care for her too. It wasn't easy. There was a part of her that resisted it, that felt a quiet fear of being a burden. But with time, she learned to accept the love that was offered to her. One evening, as her son sat across from her at the dinner table, he looked at her with a tenderness she hadn't seen in years. His eyes were soft, his smile warm, and for a moment, Rose felt a wave of emotion rise within her. How many times had she held him close, cared for him, taught him how to navigate the world? And now, here he was, returning that love, that care, without even realizing it. She had spent so many years thinking that love was something she had to give endlessly, without asking for anything in return. But now, she understood. Love was a cycle, a flow, a dance between two hearts, one giving and the other receiving. "Mom," he said softly, his voice full of warmth, "you've given me so much. I just want you to know that I see you. I see all the ways you've loved me. Even when you didn't have to, I see you, and I'm grateful." Rose felt her heart swell with emotion. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of release, of understanding. She had never realized how much she had needed to hear those words, to know that her love had been seen, had been valued. For so long, she had poured herself into others, never asking for anything in return. But now, she realized that receiving love was just as important as giving it. It was part of the journey, part of becoming. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for seeing me." As the days turned into weeks, Rose's understanding of herself deepened. She had always believed that she had to fix everything, that she had to be the one to make things right. But now, she saw that there was nothing to fix. She was not broken. She was simply becoming a person who could embrace her imperfections, who could accept the love that was given to her, and who could release the burdens she had carried for so long. One evening, as the sun set in the sky, casting long shadows across the room, Rose sat by the window once again, her heart full of quiet gratitude. The world outside was calm, the sky painted in hues of purple and gold. and she felt at peace. For the first time in years, she wasn't rushing towards something. She wasn't striving for some ideal version of herself. She was simply being, simply living in the moment, embracing the process of becoming. She thought of the years she had spent in fear of being judged, of not being enough. She thought of the times she had doubted herself, wondering if she had done enough, loved enough, given enough. But now, as she looked out the window at the world, she knew that none of that mattered. What mattered was that she had loved. What mattered was that she had lived with intention, with grace, and with a heart full of compassion. And that in itself was enough. Rose closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all her years settle gently into her chest. She wasn't finished. She wasn't perfect, but she was becoming, and that was more than enough. The breeze outside stirred gently, bringing with it the scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers. It was a reminder that life was always changing, always becoming something new. And with that thought, Rose smiled softly, knowing that no matter where life took her, she was exactly where she needed to be. As the seasons changed, so did Rose. The first hints of winter crept in, bringing with it an invitation to slow down even further. The chill in the air seemed to bring with it a kind of quiet introspection, a time for reflection. Rose found herself spending more time in the warmth of her home, curled up with a book or sipping tea by the fireplace. But it wasn't just the cold that had changed her. It was the quiet peace that had settled in her heart. One afternoon, as she walked through the living room, she passed a mirror and stopped suddenly. She hadn't looked at herself in a long time, not really looked. She studied her reflection now, tracing the lines on her face, the silver strands in her hair, the softness of her hands. There was a time, not so long ago, when she would have seen only the passage of time in those features, the years that had been filled with struggle, with worry, with striving. But now, as she looked at herself, she saw something different. She saw a woman who had lived, truly lived. She saw strength in her face, wisdom in her eyes, and kindness in the curve of her smile. She smiled at her reflection, not out of vanity, but out of recognition. You are not broken, she thought to herself. You are just becoming. It was a simple thought, but it carried a weight of truth. The journey she had walked had not been one of perfection, but one of growth. Every wrinkle, every line, every silver strand in her hair told the story of a life fully lived, a life of love, of loss, of joy, and of pain, and in all of it, she had been becoming someone who could let go of the need for perfection, someone who could embrace imperfection with grace. That evening, as Rose sat in her favorite chair by the fire, her daughter, Emma, came to visit. Emma had grown into a strong, independent woman, one who was carving out her own life, much like Rose had done many years ago. They sat together, talking about the small details of life, about work and family, and the challenges they each faced. And yet, as Rose listened to her daughter speak, she felt a profound sense of peace. She had raised Emma, guided her, loved her, and now Emma was thriving. It was in these moments of quiet connection that Rose realized just how much her love had shaped the people around her. It wasn't in grand gestures. It was in the consistency of her presence, in the gentle, steady love she had offered. After dinner, as they were cleaning up together, Emma turned to her and said, "Mom, you've taught me so much about life. I hope I can be as strong as you are, as kind, as resilient." Rose paused for a moment, feeling a lump rise in her throat. Strong, kind, resilient. These were words she had never used to describe herself. She had always seen herself as just doing what needed to be done. As a mother, a wife, a friend. But hearing Emma's words made her realize that those quiet, consistent acts of love had built something stronger than she could have ever imagined. She had taught her daughter without even knowing it, simply by living with an open heart. "I didn't know I was teaching it you, Emma," Rose said softly. "I was just doing the best I could." Emma smiled, reaching across the counter to squeeze her mother's hand. "And that's what makes you so incredible, Mom. You've always done your best, even when it was hard, and that's what I want to carry forward. Your heart, your strength." Tears filled Rose's eyes, but they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of deep, unspoken gratitude. Gratitude for the life she had lived, for the lessons she had learned, and for the legacy she was leaving behind. She hadn't been perfect. She hadn't always known the right thing to say or do. But she had loved. And that, more than anything else, was what mattered. The next morning, Rose woke up with a sense of lightness she hadn't felt in years. She sat by the window, watching the first snowflakes fall gently from the sky. The world outside was blanketed in white, quiet, and still. And in that stillness, she felt a deep connection to everything around her. The trees, the earth, the snow, the people she loved. Everything was interconnected. Everything was becoming. She understood now that life wasn't about finding perfection or holding on to what could never be. Life was about growth, about learning to embrace the changes, the challenges, and the beauty that came with each passing day. She wasn't broken. She was becoming, and that was enough. Rose stood up from the window, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She was ready to continue becoming, ready to step into the future with a heart full of love and a soul at peace. "You are not broken," she whispered to herself as she stood in the stillness of the morning. "You are just becoming." The morning after the first snow had arrived, Rose woke with a sense of calmness she hadn't known in years. The air felt crisp and fresh, a perfect stillness enveloping the house. The world outside was covered in a blanket of soft, powdery snow, the trees standing tall in their quiet elegance, branches dusted with white. It was the kind of morning that invited reflection, the kind that felt like a pause in time, a moment to simply breathe. She rose from bed and walked slowly to the window, her feet light on the hardwood floor. As she stood there, gazing out at the winter wonderland before her, she felt a sense of completeness. The past was no longer an anchor weighing her down. The future, though still uncertain, felt full of promise. She had learned in her own time to let go of the need for control, the need for perfection, the need to constantly measure herself against some ideal version of who she was supposed to be. Rose smiled softly to herself, feeling the truth of what she had learned settle deep in her chest. You are not broken. You are simply becoming. The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. She picked it up, recognizing Emma's number on the screen. "Hi, Mom." Emma's voice was bright, filled with warmth. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. I was thinking about you this morning. I'm doing well, sweetheart, Rose replied, her voice steady but full of a quiet joy. Just watching the snow fall. It's beautiful. Emma's voice softened. I'm glad to hear you're well. I've been thinking a lot about everything we talked about last time, about how much you've taught me without even knowing it. I'm really grateful, Mom, for everything. Rose's heart swelled, and she sat down in her favorite armchair, feeling her soul fill with a quiet peace. I didn't know I was teaching you, Emma, she said gently. I was just doing the best I could, but I'm glad to know that it helped. More than you know, Emma said, her voice full of gratitude. You've shown me what it means to love fully, to embrace the process of becoming, and to be gentle with myself. I want to live that way too. Rose's eyes misted over with tears, not of sadness, but of overwhelming love. She had spent so many years feeling like she wasn't enough, like she had fallen short in so many ways. But in this moment, she realized how much her love had shaped her daughter's life, how much of her heart had been passed on without her even realizing it. She had been a teacher, not through grand lessons, but through the small, everyday acts of love, patience, and presence. I'm proud of you, Emma, Rose whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You are more than enough, and you always have been. They spoke for a while longer, sharing stories, exchanging laughter, and basking in the simple joy of being together, even if only over the phone. After they hung up, Rose sat quietly, reflecting on everything she had learned. There had been a time when she had believed she was broken, that the cracks in her heart, the mistakes, the regrets, defined her. But now, she understood that those very cracks had been a part of her journey. They had allowed her to grow, to soften, to open her heart more fully. The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking the passing of time. Rose closed her eyes and let out a long, slow breath, feeling the weight of the years lift from her shoulders. The snow outside had begun to settle, the world around her perfectly still. She had spent so much of her life trying to fix things, to make everything right, to be perfect. But now, she understood that life was not about fixing or achieving. It was about living, about embracing every moment with grace, about learning to love and forgive herself. She stood up, walking to the window once more. The snow was still falling, each flake unique, each one a reminder of the beauty in the small, quiet moments of life. Rose realized that she didn't need to rush anymore. She didn't need to be anything more than what she already was. She was not broken. She was simply becoming. And as the world outside stood in quiet anticipation of the new day, Rose felt at peace. She had walked a long journey, one full of twists and turns, and now she stood at the threshold of something new, something beautiful. Her life was far from over. It was just beginning. Thank you for listening. May you find peace in the process of becoming. May you embrace every part of yourself with love. And may you always remember that you are not broken. You are simply becoming. Wishing you a quiet and peaceful evening, filled with love and acceptance. Until we meet again in the next story.